Hello everyone, it's Professor Kruger. I am making two videos for this issue of the modes of transmission. This one will be shorter, the other one is longer, and I'll explain why. I like your textbook a lot, but this is an area, what they wrote can be very confusing, and it can really make it challenging to wrap your head around what it is that they're trying to say. On top of that, depending on the source that you look at, not all sources characterize these modes of transmission in the same way. And in fact, the CDC characterizes them and categorizes them differently. So we'll get to that issue a little bit later. But what I wanted to point out right now is the way that you constructed your map probably depends on where you started with the information in the reading. Because if you start with the reading on page 198 that goes into 199, your book is outlining what it's calling 5 principal modes of transmission. They're saying 1 is contact, and that includes either direct or indirect. 2 is droplet. 3 is airborne, and they explain that those would be droplet nuclei. That's the same thing as saying a dried droplet. Vehicular, and they specify things such as food, water, dust, and fomites. That would be vehicles of the infectious agent. And then they talk about vector transmission. That's also known as vector-borne, and this is typically an insect, an arthropod insect, that is going to transmit the infectious agent. It's not always an insect, but that's typically how you hear this. Things like mosquitoes and ticks. Here's what is very frustrating, is if you then go on to the next couple of pages, you start reading page 199 and then go into 200, it does a different organizational scheme. So in those pages, it seems to have direct contact, but then all the rest of these things, it's talking about these things as indirect contact. So they even kind of combine droplet and airborne together and indicate that those are methods of indirect contact. Then they talk about things like food, water, dust, fomites, biological products. They also talk about those things as indirect contact. So already this writing and this presentation is confusing. And if you were confused by it, I don't blame you. So we'll talk about how we're going to handle this and make it less confusing. But it's a little bit of a journey, so just hang in there, and eventually we'll get to that end. In this shorter video, I wanted to just show you what a map might look like based on their strange organization in the first couple of pages, if you start in the first couple of pages. This may not be what your map looks like, and that's completely fine. In the other video, I'm going to take you through step by step the way that I had constructed a map, but I was doing it primarily off of what came in the later pages of page 199 to 200. So it looks different because I was going off of the second presentation that they gave rather than these 5 modes of transmission. It's kind of bizarre how they did both of these types of presentations. They overlap, but they don't really go that well together. If you go with the 5 modes of transmission, just as I was saying before, they say contact, droplet, airborne, vehicular, and vector. Then they say direct contact are things like skin to skin, mucous membrane to mucous membrane. Mucous membrane to mucous membrane would include intimate activity like kissing and sexual contact. Then they go on to say that the rest of these things, especially airborne, vehicular, all of these things, food, water, dust, fomites, biological products, and also vectors, those are all indirect. So I don't know why they are saying indirect as number 1, and then they're differentiating all the rest of these. It's an unclear presentation, in my opinion. So like I said in the other video, I'm going to take you step by step to try and make a little bit more sense of this. But there are still issues. they seem to combine droplet and airborne transmission together when you look at pages 199 to 200. That's very confusing, and that's something that they really should not do. There is a distinction here, and it's important that you understand that distinction, so we'll get to that. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what your map might have kind of looked like if you went over these 5 different modes of transmission, or if you use this as kind of your organizing categories. And that's fine. That's the way that the book presented it. Then they kind of switched gears and did something different in the explanation that came in the next couple of pages. So whether you have something that looks like this, whether you have something that looks different, remember that not all maps are going to look the same. What you're really worried about are doing the proper connections and really understanding why things are connected in the way that they are. And this idea of droplet transmission versus airborne transmission, again, this is an important one, and they seem to lump those together in their description. And that really is not a good thing to do. And we'll talk more about why that is later. So I'm going to end this video here. The second video takes you step by step of the thought process of how you might construct a map with the concepts that I gave to you. That one is about 20 minutes long. So make sure that you view that video as well.